now, a Wood Choppin Time quick tip.
Hello, fellow wood chopperoos. The Big Chopperoo and Safety Dan here.
Hey.
And today's quick tip has to deal with a table saw checkup. So if you bought a new table saw, or you just use your old one a lot, it's not a bad idea to every once in a while do some basic checks on it to make sure it's running true. The best way to check out your table saw is with one of these, a dial indicator. Dial indicators are incredibly precise and accurate, but no matter how well you get your machine set up with one of those, don't forget you're still working with a material that's constantly moving. Now, if you don't have a dial indicator, I do have another way you can do it. Recently, I made this. It's a jig for ripping thin strips of wood on my table saw. However, I found another use for it. Now, before we do any service on the table saw, let's take a tip from Safety Dan.
It's staying safe with Safety Dan.
Oh, hey, before you work on any machinery, always make sure that you unplug it from its power source. Sorry, wrong one.
Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to check to make sure that my blade is at a true 90 degrees to the top. Now, I could do this with my square, but here's a better way. Remove the zero clearance plate and use a combination square. This extends down, checking the whole blade, not just half of it. Now I'm setting my ripping jig in the miter track, and I'm bringing the arm to the blade. I'm making sure not to tighten the knob. This will keep the arm free to move. I'll rotate the blade and I'll check it for runout. If there is any runout, it'll push the arm, and I can always check how much runout with a feeler's gauge. So my blade is running straight and true, but my second test is now to see if the blade itself is square to the table. Again, with the arm to the blade and the arm loose so it's free to move, I'll slide the jig straight back. Now, unlike the other test, this time the arm did move, and I could measure the space with a feeler's gauge. But knowing exactly how much that space is doesn't really matter to me. I just know that I have a problem. So in this case, I have to loosen the bolt on the table saw and adjust it. I'll keep doing that until my test comes back perfectly straight. Now, let's move on to check our fence. With the fence locked down, I'll bring the arm and keep it loose again and slide it all the way down the fence. The arm, it didn't move, and for me, this is good. Now, some woodworkers like a little gap here on the back end. This is because it gives a little bit of relief on the wood as it exits the blade. However, I don't like to do this because if I move my fence to the other side of the blade, well, now the fence is pushing the wood into the blade instead of away from it. Now, the last check I'll do is to make sure that my miter gauge is at a true 90 degrees. I can use my square to check it with the miter track on the table. Tighten it up, and I'm at a true 90 degrees. But to do that every time, I'm just too lazy. Every time I use the miter gauge, I do a quick check to the edge of the table saw. The table saw edge and the miter gauge are at a perfect 90 degrees. I'll square up my miter gauge and I'm good to go. So do these checks on your table saw and your cutting pains will go away. Safety, what are you doing?
Well, I just did a checkup on your table saw, and I'm recommending 2 days off.
That's ridiculous. A table saw doesn't need any time off work.
I'm talking about me.
Well, if you like what you saw today, subscribe to us on YouTube.
Or you can join us on Facebook.
Don't forget about the blog. Well, there's one more thing I gotta do.
Chad, I think it's time for you to dance.
Ooh, yeah.
Funding for this program provided by